If you're like me, then you've been through so many times when you know you have to get your finances together, and everybody tells you that you need to make a budget and keep track of your spending. However, it doesn't seem like you can ever get into a habit that sticks. I bet we've both gone through rounds of downloading that app that people tell you is so great for handling your money, but then you download it, you can't exactly figure out how the user interface works, and you don't even know exactly what to do when you budget. So 5 days later, you forget that it's even on your phone or you've already deleted it. And honestly, it probably wasn't the app that was the problem. However, most people don't know how to budget because no one really takes the time to teach how to do it well. So in this video, I'm gonna teach you how to budget and track your expenses in a way that doesn't make you hate your life so that you don't have to be thinking about finances all the time and you can actually move forward towards your financial goals. So let's roll up our sleeves and walk step by step exactly how you're gonna be able to build this budget. And I use that cute little roll up your sleeves metaphor because I can't have the air conditioning on when I'm filming and I'm getting hot. So figuring out this system to budget and track your expenses is a two-part plan. There's the planning phase and the execution phase. The planning phase is what we're going to talk about first, and that's pretty much your traditional budget. And if you've ever heard someone talking about making a budget, you've probably heard them say that you have to lay out your income and lay out your expenses. And obviously those are really important. However, I think it leaves out one crucial step in the process, and that is called a spending plan. So the first step in creating your budget is to lay out all of your income. Now this is going to include income not only from your day job, but also if you have any side hustles like Uber or Lyft or your own small business, or if you're married, your income and your spouse's income, because I do believe that you have to do this together with a spouse. Now for someone who's on salary, this is pretty easy because your income is going to be the same month after month. However, most people have a variable or a semi-variable income. I would consider my income semi-variable because I get paid hourly and my hours aren't exactly the same every single month. But a variable income would be for someone who's either paid on commission or is paid through tips. And it can be very hard to figure out exactly how to budget those things. So I have a few tips for you in doing this. My first tip for you is to always average down or under budget, whether or not you're a semi-variable employee like me who works an hourly job or a variable employee who works like a salesperson or a waitress. Let me explain how this works. For someone like me who's an hourly employee, I'm supposed to work 40 hours a week. And if I work 40 hours a week, I know that I'm gonna make about $1,280 after taxes in my check. However, not every week do I work that full 40 hours. Whether or not I get to leave early a little bit or take a little bit extra lunch, some weeks I might only work 38 and a half hours. And so I calculated if I do that for both weeks, I would make about $1,220. However, I always want to be a little bit more conservative. That way I know that I'm spending within my means, so I budget for $1,200 instead of $1,220 or $1,280. That's where some people might get a little tripped up, because if you always budget for 40 hours a week, even though sometimes you get less, you're going to end up that time that you get less not having enough money to pay for some of your bills, your expenses, or your other budget items. And just as a note as well, whether or not you're a salaried employee or an hourly employee or a variable employee, always look at the money that you actually have coming in after taxes and after other deductions like health insurance, 401k plans, or HSAs. That way you get an accurate picture of how much you can spend that month, because even though you technically make a little bit more money than that, you're not able to spend it because it's going towards other benefits. If you're a variable employee like a waiter or a saleswoman, then always look at your lowest month. So if you're a waiter and your worst month ever was like $1,800, but your best month was $3,500 because it was Christmas time and people were feeling generous, always go with the lower amount. And if you want to be conservative like me, take it even lower. I would probably budget for $1,600 on that. This works the same for side jobs or a small business that you own as well, because budgeting for a lower amount or the very bottom that you can possibly make will mean that if you do make more money, you'll be able to allocate it towards fun things or towards your future goals when we get to our spending plan. After you've figured out your baseline income number, the second part of any budget is your expenses. Now we're going to break that down into a couple of different categories in order to help you do it a little bit better. However, just remember, you can only spend up to that baseline income. That way, if you do end up making more, you actually are able to use it for your goals instead of just spending it however your money tells you it wants to be spent. Now, you're probably able to figure out your baseline income in your head. However, you should still write down either on paper, Excel, or in an app all the different income streams that you have coming in and what that totals out to. And writing things down becomes especially helpful when you look at your expenses. Now, I really see 4 types of expenses: survival expenses, fun expenses, future expenses, and giving expenses. Your survival expenses are going to be housing, utilities, transportation, and food. Your housing expense is going to be either your rent or your mortgage. Your utility expenses are going to be any of the bills that you pay every single month. I would even include things like your phone bill, electricity, water, gas, sewage, Wi-Fi, or anything else that might be specific to you. Your transportation expenses are going to be your gas, tolls, maintenance, car insurance, and maybe a car payment, but I recommend putting that in the future, and we'll get to that in a second. And for food expenses, you can leave it just as food expenses, which would include anything like eating out, coffee, or groceries, but I personally would just put groceries in the food expenses, and then we'll put something like coffee or eating out into the fun expenses. My wife, on the other hand, will put coffee in the food budget. Your fun budget can include a lot of different things. It's basically everything that's not essential for you to live your life. However, you still want to include in your budget because it's important to you. Since this will change from person to person, I'm just going to share what goes into my fun budget so that you can get some ideas. Like I said earlier, we have eating out and coffee here. We have our gym. We also have any birthdays or celebrations that we have coming up that we buy presents for. We have Spotify as well as our date fund. And last but not least, a huge pro tip is our discretionary budget. Now, your discretionary budget or miscellaneous or whatever you want to call it is one of the most important items that you can have in your budget that will save your butt time and time again. Now, I debated whether or not to put this in the fun category or the future category because it's that important to saving your finances, but having a discretionary budget, even as little as $50, can do some serious help to keep your momentum going as you're budgeting and starting your financial journey. A real quick example of when we had to use our discretionary budget is we were in the middle of getting out of $20,000 in debt, and we were budgeting down to the penny so that we can pay everything that we could. And then one month we forgot that we had to register our cars, which was about $30. So instead of getting super stressed about it or anxious, we just dipped into our discretionary budget, and it made the unexpected expense expected. Now, before we go on to our future and giving expenses, let me share a few tips to make sure that the budget doesn't become a burden, but is actually something that helps your financial journey and you don't hate your life while you're doing it. The first tip is to always over budget. Now, I know when we talked about income, we said that you have to under budget your income so that you have more money left over. When you're talking about expenses, you need to over budget. Let me give you an example with our electricity bill. We have our electric through the Orlando Utility Company, and it ranges anywhere from $55 to $75 per month. Just depends on how much electricity we use. So instead of trying to guess every month what the next month's bill is going to be, I just put our budget at $85, so no matter what, we're going to be over what the bill actually is. That way you don't have to stress about changing your budget next month or whether or not you'll have enough money to pay, because you're always expecting the bill to be higher than it actually is possibly going to be. Now, this works not only for survival expenses, but also for fun expenses. However, make sure that you're still staying below your baseline income and leaving room for your giving and future expenses, because that way you'll be able to win with your money. The next category of expenses is your future expenses. Now, these are things that are going to help you build wealth over the long term and provide for your family and generations to come. You're going to have a couple of goals. Get yourself completely out of consumer debt, save up an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses, whatever you're more comfortable with, invest lots of money, and make sure that the people that you care for are covered. To go a little bit deeper, if you do have debt, make your minimum payments and save anywhere from $1,000 to 1 month's worth of expenses that we just went through. After you have your mini emergency fund, pay off your debt as aggressively as possible, but if your employer offers a 401k match, invest up to the match amount. So if they match up to 3% of your salary, invest that amount because that's free money. And then after your debt is paid off, continue to make the same 401k contribution and now build up your savings to 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. And then after you've saved up 3 to 6 months of expenses, start investing at least 15% more if you can. And then if you do have people depending on you for income, for instance, kids or a spouse, I'd recommend getting a cheap term life insurance policy for 10 times more than your income. Now, the last category of expenses you might not agree with me on, and that is the giving expenses. I don't believe you build wealth for a number and you're just trying to reach $1 million, $1 billion. You build wealth in order to invest not only in yourself, but your family and your community. And a big part of that is to be able to give to causes that you love. Now, you can decide this number for yourself. However, I do think it's important to be giving. And we've decided 10% is our baseline. And then as we've been able to grow our finances, get out of debt, and start investing, we've added $100 a month to that 10% baseline as well. So now that you have all of your expenses, you're going to want to total all of those up. And if your number is less than your income, you're going to want to go back and put more money either into your future or giving expenses so that it equals your income. After that, we're going to start working on a spending plan, which is something that not a lot of people have in their budget, but I think is really important. Your spending plan is a way to make sure that if you're able to make any more money than your income was expected to be, or you can save any money out of your budget, which we set your budget up to make sure that you do, you're going to be able to use that money for what you want. You have 2 phases of a spending plan: the dollar phase and the percent phase. In the dollar phase, you're going to think of any items that you can't fit in your budget that you want. I personally don't use the dollar phase in my spending plan very much and normally skip to the percentage phase. However, some examples might be like some clothes that you can't afford in your normal budget or something for your hobbies. Once you get to the percentage phase, you can start working on some of your goals. Now, this might be something that you're working on in your future or giving part of your budget. However, it could also include something like a vacation fund. For example, our spending plan is very simple. For every dollar that we're able to either squeeze out of the budget or make more than our income was expected to be, we put 10 cents towards vacation, 10 cents towards giving, and 80 cents towards our house fund, which is actually turned into a van life fund, but that's another story. That means that if we have an extra $10 or $10,000, we're able to allocate it to what we want. So now you should have your income written down, all of your expenses, as well as your spending plan. So now you know exactly what you're gonna do with your money and how much money you have coming in. And honestly, for a lot of people, that can be the easy part. The hard part is actually being disciplined and executing on your plan. So now we're gonna talk about the execution part of making this budget that doesn't make you hate your life. Now, in any system of managing your money, I have two prerequisites. It's easy, and you have to spend less time thinking about money. And this system does that for you. Now, one of the biggest frustrations that a lot of people have when they start managing their money is they don't get paid when they want their money. So that means when they do get that paycheck, it just goes straight to bills, and then they find themselves scrambling trying to find money to actually buy groceries and gas. So my solution to this is a one credit card, one bank account approach. Some of your bills aren't gonna be able to be paid on a credit card, so you're still gonna have to use your bank account, but for everything that you can, use a credit card. That way you don't have to worry about exactly when you get paid in order to use your money. A big key to this is making sure that you look at your budget and not your bank account when you're trying to figure out whether or not you have enough money to spend, because your bank account just shows you one number, whereas your budget is broken down to all the categories that you've already decided you want to spend money on. Now, I'm specific on this being a credit card and not a debit card, not only because you don't have to wait until you're paid to buy groceries, but also there are a lot of other good benefits. Your credit card is going to give you some extra security beyond your debit card because there's actually purchase protection built into a lot of credit cards, which means that if something breaks, you might have a built-in warranty with your credit card. You also might be able to earn rewards on your purchases, and then you can redeem those rewards for fun things or for your future goals like saving money, investing money, or paying off debt. And using this method, you're also going to make sure that you're paying off your credit card every month, and that means your credit score is going to go up, which is going to save you tons of money when you buy a house and get a mortgage. But what if you have credit card debt? And this is where it gets a little bit tricky with my method. However, there is still a way to do this really well. The first question is, how disciplined do you think you are? And then we'll ask the real question, how disciplined do your friends think you are? And then if they say you're disciplined with your credit card, I would recommend getting another credit card that you don't have debt on, and that would be the one that you use in order to do this, because that way you know exactly how much you spent on the card every single month and know that you'll pay that off with your normal budget. However, if you or your friends say that you can't be trusted with a credit card and you cut them all up because you have credit card debt, there's still a way for you to do this really well. One paycheck worth of money in your checking account that you don't touch would pretty much do the exact same thing as a credit card in this system. We're using the credit card so we don't have to wait to get paid to use money, but if you just have one pay worth of money in your checking account, it does the same exact thing. That way, if you don't trust yourself around a credit card, you can still use the system so that you can budget and track your expenses without hating yourself. Now, if we are using a credit card, obviously whenever you get paid, you're gonna wanna pay off your credit card so that you never carry a balance. So now that we know that you can use both a credit card or a debit card, one of the other benefits of using a one card, one account approach is that you can actually track your expenses a lot easier. Whether or not you track your expenses manually or they're automatically input into an app like Mint, using a one card, one account approach means that you don't have to look across a lot of different banks and accounts to make sure that you're managing all of your money. You only have to look at two places. And because you're only looking at two places, to track your expenses every month only takes about 15 minutes a week. Starting out, it might take you a little bit longer because you have to get used to the process. However, now I can be watching TV, playing a game on my phone, and balancing my expenses all at the same time and still do it in like 15 minutes. And I do recommend doing this every week, or at least looking at your budget a couple times a week to get a bearing as to what you can spend during the rest of the month. And in one of those times that you sit down to look at your budget, you're gonna wanna do what I call an overage calculation. And this is where your spending plan shines. I know overage calculation might sound a little bit daunting, but there's honestly not too much math. This is how it works. Toward the end of the month, sit down and see how much left you have to spend in your budget. Since it's the end of the month, it's probably not gonna be a lot. For our example, we'll say that you have $20 left to spend in your grocery budget and $30 left to spend for gas. The next thing that you're going to want to look at is your credit card that you're using and how much you have left to pay off on it. For our example, we'll say you have $1,000 left on your credit card because you just got paid and you haven't quite paid it off yet. Now, the income section is going to include your balance in your bank account as well as any more income that you should have coming in through the month. For our example, we're going to say that we have $1,500 left in our bank account and we don't have any other income that we have planned coming in. So we have $50 left to spend in our budget this month, $1,000 left to pay off on our credit card, and $1,500 worth of income. So we're going to take that $1,500 number and subtract $1,050 and we're left with $450 worth of overage. Now this is where you get out your spending plan and allocate those dollars. So if you decided to put 50% towards paying off debt and 50% towards saving for your higher emergency fund, you would put $225 towards debt and $225 towards that savings. Another meaningful use for this overage money might be towards something that we all hate the most, which is unexpected expenses. However, luckily the way that we set up our budget gives us 3 ways to get around those unexpected expenses. The first is your discretionary budget like we talked about before. The second is over budgeting your expenses and under budgeting your income so that you have an overage at the end of the month like we just talked about. And the third is your savings, because if you follow this method, you're gonna have a lot of savings built up. So now that you have a plan for your money and a way to execute on that plan, I have 2 final tips that are really gonna bring it all together. The first tip that I have is find someone to do this with to keep you accountable. It can be a spouse, a best friend, or just anybody that you want to really win with their money. The second is to be disciplined, but give yourself grace. It takes 90 days at least to build a habit. So if you don't get this immediately in the first 3 months, don't worry. Pick yourself up and start again, because I'm sure you will make more progress even failing at doing this than you would have if you didn't start at all. So if you're ready to finally turn your finances around and you want to follow this system but you don't have a credit card yet, watch this video right here and it'll break down exactly what you need to know for how to get your first credit card. If you already have a credit card but you want to see how me and my wife sit down and actually make this budget together, watch this video right here and I'll see you there. Thanks.